We are going live in five, four, three, two, and one. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your Gcast host, Marcus Julian Carbo, here in TFWM Studios here in Philadelphia. Still getting used to the new call letters. The new Taiji Fit with Marcus Studios. That's me. Oh, buddy. So it is Monday morning, and it is the week. It is the week before July 4th, the week before summer really gets underway. We got some feedback over here. Let me make sure we doing all my sound check and drips and all that good stuff. Because right after the Chi-Cast today, you'll be able to check out on your own. Join us live for the next. You got it. Tai Chi Fit Flow experience, right? You can join me live on all of our social media stuff, or if you're really special, get a hold of the link itself and come join us on Zoom. You know where to get the link. You don't have to ask me. You know where to get that link. So don't even pretend. But the big thing this week, the big thing more than anything, is the fact that we are having, or we are at the end of our New Me Tai Chi contest. Hashtag New Me Tai Chi. And what was at stake? What's really going on this week? Well, first thing at stake, well, growing the family, obviously, getting those likes, those shares, subscribes, and all that kind of good stuff, moving through the interwebs as they are. And also, let's see, I'm just making sure I'm getting all of our links and everything out on the interwebs as always. So you'll notice that we're doing things a little differently today. We're over on YouTube. And you may be asking yourself, why are we over on YouTube? And that kind of brings us to our point. So I'm going to let that sit and simper for a little bit as we get totally set up. Sharing the links out here. And once I get the first link put up, then we are off to the races. All right. So here is the official call. The hashtag Chi-Cast is live. And there's the link. Something simple, right? That's what we're doing. So that's for you, Tai Chi with veterans. And then we're going to head over to, whoopsie, Tai Chi with Marcus. That's me, in case you forgot. And then last but not least, actually, not even last but not least on Facebook, is, oh, look at that. Silence is not an option. All right. I'm actually glad I went to the Tai Chi Fit page here, the community page, because I see, if you've been there and you've seen this as well, the backdrop of the Tai Chi Fit Facebook page has been changed. In fact, hashtag silence is not an option. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Yeah. Listen. I have avoided saying anything about this since it all broke out because when you are in a position like I am, you represent not yourself. You represent a group of people. You represent an idea. And you have to make sure in the representation of that idea that you represent it properly. Now, here's the thing. Since the whole insanity has kicked off, and mind you, I have had conversations with DDR dating all the way back to last year when him and I first kind of rediscovered each other and started collaborating on the Veterans Project. And he has always maintained the idea that Black Lives Matter. Well, yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that comes out from that is, of course, the All Lives Matter thing. Now, we're actually going to talk a little bit about that today, and I'm so glad that I saw that as I was doing my rounds this morning, just because it really does fit into what I want to talk about today on the GCast. So let's get all of the stuff we got to get out of the way, so that you are going forward in your day prepared and ready to rock. So let's talk about a couple of current events here in the Tai Chi Fit world. So first and foremost, this week is the end of the contest New Me through Tai Chi. Now, granted, the new me, the new you being created through Tai Chi, that's not over. That has just begun. But over the course of the last month, you guys have been sharing your stories with us, letting us know how Tai Chi is affecting your life, how you use it in your daily life, and also just showing us your families and all the great things that you're doing. And now comes the payday. So this week at the Hangout with David Dorian Ross, we're going to be tallying up the final votes, and you'll be able to use the hashtag up to the start of this week's Hangout, at which time we here behind the scenes at Tai Chi Fit will go in, count up and tally and separate and all that kind of good stuff, all the hashtags that went out. We're doing that as it's going on, but we'll get the last of them at the Hangout, which will be really cool. And by the end of the Hangout, we'll announce the winner. Hopefully, if not, we'll announce the next day. The winner, the person that is selected as winner for the New Me Through Tai Chi series, will receive free DVD from Tai Chi Fit, a free t-shirt, hashtag New Me Tai Chi t-shirt, fresh off the press for you at the size of your choosing, and most importantly, 30 minutes one-on-one with the great one, with David Dorian Ross. You go ahead and mine his brain for all of the Tai Chi knowledge. You're going to get like 2 lines into it, I promise you. I've trained with the man before. He is a wealth of knowledge, and in those 5 words is about the Encyclopedia Britannica of one sliver of one part of Tai Chi. So get them out there. This goes all the way up till the Hangout. The Hangout is the end of it. So keep pushing. Keep getting those hashtags out there. Remember, share them on your feeds. Your feeds. Not in the Tai Chi Fit feeds. That doesn't do us any good. That's preaching to the choir. We are trying to grow our family. So get that hashtag out. Get out there today. It is not too late. Do not let Julie Stratton beat you. That's right, Julie. I'm talking to you. I know you're out there leagues before everybody. That doesn't matter because every moment counts. And here we are ready to make the new me through Tai Chi. Yes. And speaking of new me through Tai Chi, over the course of the GCast, because this has become a thing during our pandemic. This is one of those fun things that sprouted up because of the pandemic. And since the pandemic took over, so most of our talking points and most of everything that has come up has been related to the quarantine or to the protests that have been happening all around the country, and in fact, all around the world. And today I'm gonna get into some deeper things. I'm definitely gonna get into some deeper things because a lot was on my mind over the weekend. And I'm the director and producer of the show, so we do. No, but seriously, there was a lot on my mind over the weekend having to do with, honestly, with fear, right? And that idea, that understanding, that new you, when you want that new you to, in fact, be you, takes a little bit of courage, right? A little bit of courage, you know. But when we think of things like courage, we often think of like Alexander the Great or Julius Caesar. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. I keep pecking at the big topics, the big things we're doing today, and I'm getting ahead of myself because I still haven't let the entire world know that we are live and streaming. Yes. All right, so join us now. So just a reminder, I can be found all over the place, all over the web. Tai Chi with Marcus on Facebook, Tai Chi W Marcus on Twitter, Tai Chi with Marcus on Patreon, and of course, if you trip over Tai Chi Fit, you're going to first land on DDR, and then you'll find me somewhere in the rug, in the carpet somewhere. All right, now, as we push through, as we get things ready, and the new me through Tai Chi, while the contest is going to end, I want you to think about progress that you've made, even if that progress has only been mental. When someone says, let's put something out into the universe, understand that your thoughts are electrons firing off on synaptic pathways. All right? They are physical manifestations that exist in the universe. And when you think something, you set off a set of synapses in your head. And every time you think it, you set off those same synapses and grow them. They strengthen. It's like exercise for your brain. The more you strengthen it, the more interest you take in it, the more you start to study. Until you get out of the theoretical and you try it, right? You get out of your mind and you try it physically. So if you're going to try a diet, if you're going to try a new career, a new hobby, anything like that, you're going to first start thinking. So if all that changed in your life over the last 6 weeks is that you're now thinking about Tai Chi and wellness and mindfulness and nutrition and what you could potentially be, well, then you're in the right place. You have done exactly what you should have done on the start of your journey. You gotta map it out first. Now, that doesn't mean you need an entire detailed map. You've got to walk out in the wilderness and find all the bumps and bruises and drops and valleys and all that kind of stuff that's out there. You gotta do that. But that doesn't mean you can't pack a lunch before you hit the road, right? You got to think these things through, and I get that. And so there's a process. But in those thoughts, you are, in fact, putting it out into the universe. And the more you think about it, the closer you get to manifesting what it is you desire. Why? Because you start to think about it. It's no different than when you buy a car and you start to see that car everywhere. That's just your brain recognizing the car all of a sudden. There's no, I mean, there's one more car on the road because you just bought one, but there's, I mean, from a volume perspective, is negligible from the Saturday that you bought your car to the Monday that you find yourself on the road surrounded by all of the same cars that you have. It's one of the reasons there's an exclusivity on the luxury market, because you don't see Maseratis all the time, right? You don't see, Bentleys going down, getting stuck in rush hour traffic all that often. So the exclusivity of these brands is what puts them above and beyond. But if you're not in the wealthiest 1% and you're down here driving a Honda, well, yeah, you're going to see a lot of Hondas out there because that's what the people drive. But if you drove a Hyundai prior to the Honda, then you probably saw whole bunch of Hyundais everywhere, right? So it's just a matter of psychological recognition. So when you say you're putting it out in the universe, don't look at that as like, I'm manifesting something out of my head. No, you are creating something in the synaptic pathways of your mind. You are pushing towards goals. You are making things happen, because here's the thing. And this is what we want to talk about today. Courage. Right? And I have over here, where's my deal here? My courage banner, which is right up there, says courage, right? And courage is not the absence of fear or despair, but the strength to conquer them. And I would actually say the strength to act in spite of fear and despair. Because at no point, when I think of, actually, I don't want to start there. We're going to work our way up to that. Because we're going to start at the very, very, very beginning today. But the other side is wisdom. And the way that I look at it is this: wisdom is the ability to think. Wisdom is the ability to know what's just, to know what's virtuous, to know what's right. Courage is the act of doing it. Okay? So your wisdom will tell you that you need to eat better. Courage is the act of doing it, of enduring the pain of eating better until it becomes a pleasure. Wisdom is, I need to exercise more. Courage is the act of actually exercising. Why? Because the act itself requires you to be uncomfortable. Now, the act itself is good for you. You know this, right? For most people, some kind of physical activity is good for them. Now, you don't have to be a maniac like me, but just gentle physical activity, 20 to 30 minutes, a couple of times a week, some cardio in your life, whether it's just walking at a brisk pace or maybe going bike riding, or maybe you're a jogger. Whatever, get your cardio on. Maybe you're running around with the grandbabies or the children, and you got them in the wagon and you're just running with them for, a couple of minutes every day. You know how kids are, they're just boundless energy. So you, by virtue of being out there with them, is you getting some exercise, you being active. The only difference is that it's passive exercise versus active exercise. But exercise nonetheless. Calories are going to burn themselves. And if you're thinking about it, if you're constantly thinking about it, not constantly because you don't want to obsess, but when you are sowing the seeds of change, hear what I'm saying here, sowing the seeds of change, you are essentially walking out into the unknown. There is, I believe, this is just me, pure speculation, there is a reason that people that were once in shape, it's easier for them to get back into shape. Not to say that it's easy, because we're going to talk about that a little bit later on here. That's why it's easy for people that were once in shape to get back into shape, because they are regaining something they lost. This is something they had. If you are older, say you're in your 40s, and you've never been in shape, you're going after the unknown. That can be incredibly scary. Because you don't, like, I don't look like, Chris Evans or Jason Momoa or The Rock, right? Like, I don't have that many hours in a day. So if I'm looking at these literal superheroes as, the exemplars of what I want to be in my life, and I accept nothing less, well, that's not the unknown. That's just unrealistic, right? The unknown is me going out, doing the work, and not knowing what the results are going to be. And I got some news for you, because if you were in shape and you fall out of shape and you try to get back into shape, you have no idea what's going to happen. And I bring that up to you because this week was a big milestone for me in my fitness goals. Now, for those of you that don't know, I was, good Lord, when I first started teaching as a Tai Chi instructor, and so this is going back to April of 2016. That was so long ago now. And when I started really, really training, I've been doing Tai Chi since 2010, something like that. I'm hitting my 10th year anniversary, but it was very passive, and I was just like, doing a DVD here and there, attending a class there, here and there, that kind of thing. But 2015 was sort of that fork in the road for me. And so I decided I was going to do that which helped me the most. And so here we are. And when I started in 2015, really going at it, and that means like training constantly, for hours a day, really learning the inner workings and all that kind of good stuff. And the funny thing is, like, as quickly as you can train your body, your mind, there's no like speeding that up. Like, your mind just, it goes and does its thing, and you just got to be patient with it, and it holds on and retains information when it decides it's going to. Otherwise, I mean, that's just it, right? So when I started, I want to say, like the fall of 2015, and I was in a pretty bad place at that time. So this is me beginning to climb my way out of a hole. right? And it's not to say that that hole isn't wide and I don't stumble and fall down, or that I've even climbed out of the hole, but I've definitely made my way up the chain a little bit since then. So going into, and let's just say October, November timeframe of 2015, and I was approximately 230, 235 pounds. I was a big one, right? I kind of wore it well because despite it all, Tai Chi, um, I was at least moving, but I was also eating everything in sight and drinking everything in sight. And if I ran out of stuff in sight, I would find a way to get it back into my sight. And that's just how it was. And so with that training, I ended up dropping a good 20 pounds just in the training. So that by the time April arrived, I was about, I want to say I was about 210, 215, something like that. But understand that the first cut is the deepest. After that, the real work begins. Because at first, all I needed to do was stop opening my mouth and letting stuff in. But after that, then there took real change because my metabolism had slowed down. My muscle density had gone away. My body overall was weak. And I remember talking to a friend of mine at the time and saying, I feel like I have to work out to get into shape to work out. And there's truth behind that. And you can see how daunting something like that can look, right? When you're trying to get through something. But when you start looking at it as I'm just going to do it one parting the man at a time, one class at a time, one movement at a time. So then over the course, once I started teaching, I started losing weight because I was teaching every day. Now, I didn't have a lot of students or anything in the beginning, as you can imagine. I had maybe 2 or 3 really dedicated students that were really trying to learn some Tai Chi. And we were out in the park and we would hang 2, 3, 4, 5 hours in the morning. We'd get together around 7 and we would just train. And sometimes we'd be there till about noon or 1 o'clock. Now, wasn't making much in the way of money. I wasn't doing anything like that, but I'm sticking with it because it seemed like the right thing to do. So over the course of that summer, being outside every day for hours on end, doing the Tai Chi, uh, I ended up dropping probably another 5, 10 pounds. So let's say I was about 220 when I got into the April time frame. And you can see pictures because there are pictures of me on Tai Chi with Marcus from that time period. And you can see the big difference between the two. So we got to October, and as you all know, Halloween is my big holiday, and I wanted to be the crow. The year prior, I'd actually grown my hair out over the course of 2 years. I know. There are pictures, they're up there. So I grew my hair out to be the crow. That was one of the things that inspired me to lose the weight was Halloween. I wanted to be able to do certain costumes, right? And I'm a huge fan of the superhero genre, so of course, all of the superheroes are in shape. And listen, everybody has a right to wear and do whatever costume they want to do, so long as it's in good taste and properly properly sensitive, right? I hear swastikas are never in fashion on Halloween. Although I have seen some costumes where they are not, but they're exactly where the swastika should end up, quite frankly. The Nazi version. We won't discuss either the ancient version or the Hindu one either. So what happened over the course is there was a back and forth, and there was a lot of learning and giving up. So I gave up a lot of the junk food that I was eating. So I was not eating out all the time, and I wasn't drinking 3 6-packs a day. So that helped. That helped lose a lot of weight. And over the course of that next year, I think I got down to about 200 pounds. So I had lost at that point like 2 toddlers, quite frankly, which is crazy to think of. It's absolutely crazy to think of. But at 200, I started to see it slow down, and my body was changing. And now where the pounds had melted off at first, now I had to kind of chisel them off. And I would hit these plateaus, and I would just have to be patient in those plateaus, which there were setbacks along the way. Patient in those plateaus to get down a little more, and wait for it. Because sometimes you'll just plateau, especially if you're exercising and dieting at the same time. Because there are moments where your muscle density meets up with your fat loss. And so you'll kind of be stuck at a weight for a while as your ratios change. You get to a point where the scale is just a measure of progress. The scale itself doesn't really matter until it does, right? So as I'm burning these things down, each time, each defeat, I had to muster more courage. Because the defeat, it kills your courage, right? And you don't want to step up because failure sucks and failure hurts. And so you don't want to like go into it again. So courage is in fact knowing that pain is waiting, knowing that hardship is coming and facing it anyway. Now we know what courage is. So the reason I tell this whole story is, again, my story happened back in 2015. Now at my lowest, I got down to about 183 point something. That was the lowest weight. My target weight is 180 pounds. That's what I weighed on the day that I got out of the Army. Now, I don't expect to wear it the same way that I did when I got out of the Army, for sure. But at the same time, that number, that little mythical number, it matters to me. It does. And I got really close, 183 point something. We'll say it was 184. And then I just kind of fell off the wagon. And I tumbled back to 190, and I sort of laid at 190 for a while. And then over the course of like the next holiday season, I put on another 10 pounds, and it got harder to drop. And then I was hanging out right around 200 pounds or whatever. And I tried fad diets, and I tried fasts, and I tried all sorts of different things. Now, what I will say about the fasts is that the amount of discipline that it takes to do a fast will help you in the rest of your life. And I mean that. And that is something I have not yet adopted, even though I know that if I were to fast once a week, it would boost my level of confidence, right? But I got to build that up. I'm thinking about it. I'm building those synaptic pathways. But just diet and exercise and just staying at it. So this started, this new me started back in 2015, and here we are in 2020. My muscle density is unlike it's been since my 20s. My flexibility isn't quite what it was when I was a teenager, but I'm getting it back. My cardio is way, I'm biking again. I'm doing it. My metabolism. My partner the other day was saying, "Holy, you eat like a teenager," right? And despite eating like a teenager, I've maintained the variance of my weight. But I came across a threshold. I could kind of sit here, but 190 for me is just that's just where I'm at. The goal is 180. And as I buoyed over the last several weeks at the 190 mark, so somewhere between 188 and 192, right, depending on the day, but never over, never under, there was that question, do I want to make the changes that it's going to take to get down to 180? Why? Because once I'm at 180, the goal has been achieved. Now it's a matter of maintenance, and my approach to this whole thing changes. It's not a matter of courage, it's a matter of observation. The hard part's over. The long part begins. But all of that started with a thought. Now you'll hear a lot of things. Oh, do this diet, lose a bunch of weight in a couple of days, do this, do that. It's, in all honesty, whatever your goal is, if it's to lose weight, if it's to learn a language, if it's to write a book or learn a new skill or achieve something in your community, it starts with your thoughts, and it starts when your thoughts get strong enough that they cause action. That's when you know you're on the right path, but that is an act of bravery. when you build, you hype yourself up to a point in which you finally act. You act in spite of the pain and the despair because you recognize the gains far higher than anything you might lose in the temporary. Each push-up is terrible, but the collection of push-ups that I've done over the last year, I love. I love the result. Right? So the little bit of soreness that I feel every day is worth the pride that I see every time I see my reflection, or my clothes get a little looser, or, the partner gives me a little, hey there, right? That's what you're looking for. So not necessarily in your physical goals, but in all of your goals, to step forward takes an act of courage. And this brings us to what was on my mind all weekend. And I want you to think in your head about a match. What kind of match? A wooden one that's red on the tip, that you strike, and a flame ignites, right? It ignites. Sounded like Joe Biden or Donald Trump there. So, what does a match mean? Like, we think of it as just this thing that we strike and we light something and we move on. But what does a match actually symbolize? Well, in that tiny little flame at the tip of the stick is the very thing, the very tech that led humanity from being an hors d'oeuvre to being the apex species on the planet. Without our mastery of fire, a fear that is inherent to every single species on this planet at the time, we would have never forged metals. But let's redact that even more. We would have always been afraid of the dark. We would have never been able to settle. We would have never been able to cook our foods, to unlock the nutritional value, to cut down the amount of time we eat, and at the exact same time, increase the mass of our brains so that we could think faster and quicker on our feet. We grew stronger because of fire. And there you are, sitting there with the very key to human liberation from the rest of the animal kingdom, just flickering about, just dancing on the top of a stick. But within that flame, in that pear-shaped dance, as it's just doing its thing, what are we seeing? Well, how did we even get a hold of it? To strike a match, you have to think of, well, if I don't do this right, I'm going to burn myself. If I do it really wrong, I may burn down my entire house. And if I can't strike it, I may not be able to do whatever it was I was trying to do. Heat my home, cook my food, whatever. Light my fireplace for the holiday. So it's very much win or lose when it comes to fire. So now imagine the first human beings who decided that this thing, that generally speaking, the only way they would have seen it was when the wrath of the gods came from the sky, struck the ground, and set the forest on fire. It'd be the only time you would see that a human being, that someone in our genus would have seen fire. And once you see that be the catalyst a couple of times, well, yeah, fire is the wrath of the gods. Very simple. So when those first people, whoever they were, reached into the unknown, grabbed on to something that they knew could hurt them, right? But just at the tip of the branch to pull it out. Literally reached into what they did not understand to bring it closer. They weathered the concerns that they felt internally, righteous concerns, so that they could strengthen themselves out of the strength from that which they feared. It was the courage of those people, the courage of humanity in that moment, more than just about anything else, that separated us from the rest of the animal kingdom. We conquered our fear of fire, and in the process conquered the entire planet. Humanity owes its place in the universe because of an act of bravery. Which is ironic, because we now live in an age of fear. I'm only going to speak on the things that I can speak on, okay? I'm an American, or I was born in America at least. I served. I've traveled the country, but I've traveled all around the world. And I try to do my best to keep up with current events. So I'll speak to the things that I can speak on. When you hear words like bigotry, the idea of bigotry is the fear of new ideas, of different ideas. So if you are of one religion and you don't like another religion, you are a bigot. If you are afraid of outsiders, that is xenophobia, the fear of outsiders. So if you are whoever and you are afraid of whoever crossing your border, you are afraid of outsiders. And this brings us full circle. Because if you are afraid, well, let me put it this way. Racism is the fear of those who tan better. Yeah, I said that. Racism is the fear of those who tan better. The idea that someone is somehow inferior because of the level of melanin or melatonin, no, melanin, I'm sorry, melanin in their skin, or someone is greater because of the melanin in their skin or lack thereof, is about as ridiculous as one can get. Because if you were to take a child, a baby, newborn baby, right out of the hospital cradle, okay, in Beijing, and you transport that child to Toronto, now that child's parents may have Far East Asian genetic descent. But if you take that child and have them adopted by a Canadian family, culturally that child will be Canadian. That child will not speak Mandarin simply because they're Chinese or Cantonese. They will speak, depending on what part of Canada, English, French, or both, because that's their culture. Now, their genetics may say that the line of people that brought them to existence traveled over the course of humanity, right? Over the course of human migrations across the planet, and landed them between two people in Beijing. But the capacity of that person to learn English, to learn French, to dress like a Westerner, that's all there. That's software. Your sexual preference, your gender, wherever you may be on the spectrum, your ability to tan, wherever that is on the spectrum, whatever little changes that may have happened over the courses of millions of years due to environmental impacts on isolated groups of people are meaningless. They're all meaningless. Because one, we can all have babies together, so enough said there. And our babies can have babies, so we're all one species, right? Biologically speaking. Now, we all know this, and in fact, the people who are like, all lives matter, most of them know this too, right? This is not information that isn't readily and widely available. Not by any means is it not readily and widely available. It doesn't matter because this isn't a logical thing, because fear, at the end of the day, is not logical. Being worried about something, being careful, that's logical. Absolutely. Not jumping off the cliff is logical because you know what will happen at the end. But being afraid of somebody new, being afraid of, you hear in the EU with all of the Muslim refugees from, coming over there, and they're going to change Europe. A couple of million people are going to change the densest, most populated part of the world outside of China and India, right? The densest, most populated part of the world whose culture goes back 2,800 years to the founding of Rome. Their whole culture is going to be upset because a couple of million people show up? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Especially when you consider the fact that those aforementioned Romans, without the internet, without satellite communication, without cell phones, radios, television, or any modern propaganda machines, were able to Latinize and Romanize everything from Hadrian's Wall to the Nile Delta, from the Pillars of Hercules or the Straits of Gibraltar, all the way to the Persian Gulf at their height. All those people, think about how vast and how different all those areas of the Roman Empire would have been. And yet you would have been able to speak Latin, wear a toga, trade, use sesterces. Why? You'd be able to find your gods. You'd be able to do the whole thing. Whether you lived in the Levant or you lived in Iberia, you would be able to be Roman. And it wasn't predicated on your skin color, because the Romans knew that the Egyptians had been around forever, and the Egyptians knew that the Nubians had been around for forever, and there was that understanding of respect. And back then, it was the tall, bearded white guys that would have been the barbarians. So things changed, and even they were brought in. Speaking of courage, one of the people we think about the most when it comes to courage is Julius Caesar. Well, geez, you want to talk about active courage? Crossing the Rubicon is an act of courage. Crossing the Rhine is an act of courage. Crossing the English Channel for Julius Caesar, act of courage. Stepping into the unknown, learning something new, just like humanity did when it grabbed the first branch and lifted fire from wherever it was. Now, bravery. Now, apply what we just discussed. Apply the concept of the unknown and stepping into it. Because really, is it unknown? Is learning a new culture really an unknown? Do you become less of who you are because you learn more of something else? Or do you, in fact, become enriched? Well, I'm one to always err on the side of more. The more I know, the better I am, stronger I am, even if it's to know that that's just not me. That's information that informs me about who I am and the world around me. And I only get that by being brave enough to try stuff, new stuff, old stuff, different stuff, strange stuff. It's the only way to do it. Only way to do it. Now, we've all had that, whether we were young and we were traveling, or we found ourselves in a situation that just put us out of the norm. Halloween's a good example of this. Everybody's in costume, everybody's somebody else, and you tend to act differently when you're acting not of yourself. You'll be stronger. You'll buy the drink for that person on the other side of the bar. You'll talk to people that you normally wouldn't talk to. Right? You'll just intermingle, and by the end of the night, you could be with a whole different peer group than you were when you started. Why? Because I'm just going to go with it. Are you? Do bad things happen? Sure, they happen. Do people get hurt? Sure, people get hurt. That is a part of life. But if you're going to live in the shadow of what could happen versus facing it, and I'm not saying this is any paragon of this as well. These are just what I understand. I'm still practicing them myself, right? When I have to grit down into something that's hard, I really got to grit down. So the biggest thing right now, though, is listening and, in fact, inaction, right? So it's one of the protesters that we're seeing in the streets, what we're seeing is their anguish and their anger come out, finally let loose. And the state responds with militant police in force. Notice that wherever they show up in force, there is conflict. Wherever the police show up in regular uniforms, take knees, and walk with the protesters, no conflict. And I wonder why that is. Those police have to be brave enough to hope that crowd doesn't eat them alive. Right? But in their show of we're just here like we normally are, that puts the protesters at ease, which allows very peaceful protest. When they show up looking like they're ready to take Baghdad, that sends the signals to the protesters that you're at war. And when you already feel put upon, and the state then shows its force militantly, well, then all the state has done is reinforce the idea of the oppression that is being perceived. Now, depending on whether you want to say that oppression is right or wrong, depends on where you fall on the political spectrum, because we are that afraid as a nation. We are afraid to step away from our tribal mind. We are afraid to step away from Team Red and Team Blue. Why? Team Red and Team Blue, they don't care about anybody unless you're actually in Team Red and Team Blue. Just because you vote Team Red and Team Blue, and just because you have a membership card from your local voting office that says you're on Team Red or Team Blue, you're not on the team. They don't let you into the cocktail parties and the donation centers, and you don't have Nancy Pelosi or Mitch McConnell on speed dial. You wouldn't even know where to start. You don't tweet them and suddenly they respond. You and I are not in the club when it comes to that. And yet, we all know this. We all know this because every year at all times, Congress, I don't think, has been above 20% in its approval ratings. In fact, I've seen it as low as 8% just before an election, which tells me that 92% of Congress should be gone in January and 92% of Congress should be brand new. But it never happens. You lose one or two congressmen here or there. Why? Because we're scared. We are scared. We're scared. We're scared. Sound like my friend from Spain. We're scared of, well, what will happen? That's what you're seeing with this idea with Biden. Oh, we can't do another 4 years of Trump. Well, if you go to the right, there you would swear that Joe Biden was Che Guevara. If you listen to, a hardcore conservative. And that right there shows you, number one, and this is what I've heard from a lot of people, is that they get their information, not just their information, but their opinions from their news. It's okay to get your facts from the news. But then you need to have the courage to come up with your own opinions. Right? So when it comes to fear at the end of the day feeds hate. Courage, on the other hand, feeds success. When we look at the top moments in human history, we don't lionize Dr. Martin Luther King because he hid in a bunker. We lionize him because he put his neck out on the line every time he marched, every time he spoke. And ultimately, that courage cost him his life. The same with Gandhi. The same with Marie Curie, breaking the boundaries for women in science. For W.B. Du Bois and Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, who actually stepped up against a systemic institution that was being legally defended to keep people that looked like them enslaved. As you go through your life, as you go through your day, as you make your decisions, the question you should be asking yourself is, am I making this decision because I'm afraid of something? Or do I not want to go there because I'm scared of what will happen? And if that is the only reason you don't make a move, you need to make that move. You need to step up and find your courage. You can find it. Because fear injects itself in the most unfortunate ways. Maybe you're sitting at home right now, not sure about Tai Chi or finishing your certification, and you've been sitting on it forever. Why? Because it seems like a lot you got to do. It's going to be painful. It's going to be oppressive. There's so much. Give that up. Give that up. Just do it. Duck your head and do it. It's way less painful than you think. And listen, you can put yourself way far ahead in doing so. Fear paralyzes. Courage promotes. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into a lot of things when it comes to why somebody is afraid of something. And this goes to our concepts before of understanding who people are and seeing things from their perspective. Because at least if you can understand where they're coming from, you understand what you're up against. Know thyself, know thy enemy. So, can you make yourself uncomfortable? Right? If you're sitting there and you're saying, well, all lives matter. Okay. Well, how would you know? How many people that tan well live in your neighborhood? How many are in your workforce? How many are your peers? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself. And are you willing to step across lines, take a chance, to be courageous, to be just like Australopithecus, grabbing that branch and pulling the fire out? The most powerful human that probably ever lived was the person that figured out not just how to control the fire, but how to start one. But think about what goes into starting a fire. Whether you're using the tree or the twig technique or using stones, you're going to scrape skin, build calluses, burn yourself, probably a lot. And you're going to have to keep doing it until you get it right. Tai Chi hides the pain. It hides it. It hides it in its gentle movements. But how often at the end of a Tai Chi workout are you breathing heavy? Are you tired and you're sweaty? And if you're not, come to my class. I'll get you there. Which starts at 11:30, by the way. You know the links. So the question I really want you to ask yourself, especially when it comes to current events, is am I acting out of fear or am I holding on to my courage? Am I riding my courage? Oftentimes, fear is from the outside. Courage is from within. And in fact, that is the way it goes. And if you are a Tai Chi aficionado, then that inner you is loud. It is talking to you. You have contact with your courage, with the things, with your virtues that most people don't. If you listen to yourself, and you will see that in others. And then you can use your virtues to understand others. And then your fear starts to subside. I'm trying to open up a document here that is sort of my penultimate statement. But I think I'm going to save that because we're coming to the end of our hour. And that's up for consideration for publication anyway. So we'll save that until it's out in the ether and I hear back. But I wanna take the final moments of this of our Monday Chi-Cast, starting off our week very much in deep thought. And that is, the world we find ourselves in now is ruled by fear. If we look at our two political candidates, Donald Trump represents the fear of foreigners, the fear of the different, the fear of new, the fear of change. Joe Biden represents the fear of Trump. That's all he represents. You know why I know that? Because nobody can tell me why they're voting for Obama without not voting for Trump. Oh, I'm sorry. I sound like Joe Biden now. Voting for Biden without mentioning Trump or Obama. Nobody. Absolutely nobody. Not even Joe Biden can say why you should vote for him without mentioning Obama or Trump. So you're voting for somebody that doesn't stand for anything. Okay. So Trump is Fear par excellence. And Joe Biden is fear light. But it's fear nonetheless. And when we act out of fear, we lose. Now you may be asking, well, what the hell can we do? Because here we are. Well, you're right. You're absolutely right. But think about when we're talking, current events, think about Colin Kaepernick. That was an act of bravery, and an act of bravery that, if it would have been listened to when he took his knee, people would not be out on the streets right now. Because it's not like we haven't been dealing with the Black Lives Matter movement since 2014. It's not as if it's a big secret that African Americans in our country are disproportionately kind of screwed over by the system, by design. And you know this because would you trade places? Would you have rather have been born black? And if the answer is anything other than, yeah, I wish I had been born black, then you know, and you are aware. And once you are aware, you're now responsible. And that's why ignorance is bliss. And when you are responsible, then it takes courage to act. But it all starts with a thought. And so that's it. That's all you need to do right now is think. Start to think beyond yourself. Just like when you're in class and you're stretching out and you're extending who you are, beyond who you are, beyond what you consider you. It's no different. You're just doing it in your mind. And the difference, there is one big difference. Your mind has no limitations. It can go everywhere and anywhere you want it to go. Your body can only go in so many directions. So as you move through life today and every day, ask yourself what's driving you. What's driving your vote? What's driving your decision? Is it fear? And would you make the same choice if you drop that fear? All right. I'm going to close us out for today. Remember, New Me Through Tai Chi, first off, isn't just a hashtag. It's a way of life. We'll get the winner this week at the Hangout. So look closely for that one. Check me out. 11:30. You know where the links are, so go check out the links. We're going to make that nice and easy for everybody, actually. Rosie has created a website that has all of our links everywhere, and you'll just go to the website, click in, and it'll open the rooms for you. It'll be wonderful. That way we can do whatever we need to behind the scenes, and you don't have to worry about it. You can just pop right in. And then finally, just get ready. It's summer. And even if you're not going out and catching the coronavirus, you're at home deepening your relationships, deepening your practice. That's what we're here for. All right? So until I see you again, I'm going to wish you health, happiness, and harmony. Until next time, stay home, stay safe, stay courageous, and I'll see you next time.